dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky. This is WYMT Mountain News at 11.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. Thanks for staying up with us. President Joe Biden addressed Congress and the nation in a fiery and political State of the Union speech. He discussed many of the issues concerning Americans, including the economy, foreign wars, and the migrant crisis. CBS's Natalie Brand has the latest from Capitol Hill.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
Before Congress and the American public, President Biden delivered his final State of the Union address ahead of November's presidential election.
What makes our moment rare is that freedom and democracy are under attack both at home and overseas.
While the State of the Union is an official speech, the president touched on key election year issues, including abortion.
If you, the American people, send me a Congress that supports the right to choose, I promise you, I'll restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land again.
On the economy, the president touted job growth.
America's comeback is building the future of American possibilities, building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down.
And called on Congress to cap out-of-pocket drug costs at $2,000 a year for Americans with private health insurance.
Americans pay more for prescription drugs than anywhere in the world. It's wrong, and I'm ending it.
As Republican lawmakers in Congress accused the administration of failing on the border, the president called for a bipartisan solution.
Get this bill done. We need to act now.
The president also unveiled plans for a temporary aid port on Gaza's coast to ease the growing humanitarian crisis as ceasefire talks in the war between Israel and Hamas stall.
Outside, pro-Palestinian demonstrators gathered near the Capitol. Families of Israeli Americans held hostage in Gaza were among those invited as special guests by lawmakers, as well as Ukrainian Americans, as foreign aid continues to be held up in the U.S. House. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
Earlier, former President Donald Trump, who is moving closer to clinching the GOP presidential nomination, released a social media video lashing out at President Biden on crime and immigration. Just before tonight's address, Congressman Hal Rogers released a statement saying in part, quote, "I echo the concerns of our people in southern and eastern Kentucky who want a secure border, safer communities, and an end to sticker shock at every turn. We have been riddled with liberal policies that have torn at the very fabric of our country's cloak of liberty, and our people are deeply concerned about the direction we are headed with the Biden administration," end quote. Congressman Rogers has also announced the bipartisan funding bills that will keep the federal government operating also includes money for Kentucky. About $86 million is coming to eastern Kentucky, including $3 million to build new homes for survivors of the 2022 flooding. Nearly $21 million is coming to help with water and wastewater treatment facilities in Boyd, Clay, Harlan, Floyd, Lawrence, Martin, and Rowan counties. There's also money for Operation Unite's substance abuse programs. $45 million is set aside to start the northern bypass in Pulaski County that will connect the Hal Rogers Parkway to the Louis Nunn Cumberland Parkway. And Kentucky will get about $27 million to help communities impacted by abandoned mines. Now to a developing story we're following tonight out of Letcher County, where a death investigation is underway. State police say troopers and detectives are at a scene on Dinah Blair Road. Police say one person is dead, but no other information is being released yet. We'll, of course, keep you updated as we learn more on WYMT.com.
Well, enjoy the calm weather this evening because we are tracking that moisture to once again increase as we close out the work week on Friday. Let's take a live look at First Alert Pinpoint Doppler. No rain, but this radar is picking up on that low-level moisture, so possibly some areas of dense fog as we go through late tonight, also early on Friday. And those current temperatures a little bit cooler than recent nights, down to 46 in Pikeville, 43 for Clintwood, 49 for Jackson, 51 over in Irvin, also in London and Laurel County at this hour. And most of us wake up in the upper 40s to lower 50s as you walk out the door on Friday. Once again, we are mainly dry overnight and we stay cloudy as well, and those rain chances are set to increase by Friday, all thanks to our next weather system. As we zoom out, we are tracking some moisture over Oklahoma, Texas, also Arkansas, Missouri, pushing into western Kentucky, and that weather system is moving into our region. So we are tracking some more wet weather at times tomorrow. Not going to rain 24/7 and no severe weather, but you will need the umbrella at times. So a first alert to grab the umbrella as you walk out the door on Friday. Temperature is also warmer tomorrow. We top out in the middle to upper 60s. More wet weather to start the weekend, and then high pressure controls the forecast for most of next week. Those details coming up in just a little bit. Steve?
All right, Cameron, thank you. Kentucky lawmakers may vote on a bill this year to increase the penalties for people who engage in cockfighting. The bill was set to be heard in a committee this morning, but it was delayed. Senate Bill 243 would make cockfighting a felony. It's now a misdemeanor in Kentucky. Supporters of the bill say cockfighting often leads to other crimes and problems, and the current penalties are not stopping the practice.
You see drug trafficking, small towns, a lot of people gather in them, prostitution comes, it brings with it a tide of related criminal activity. And we have many undercover videos of recent cockfights in more rural parts of the state. So we know that they are happening.
Grove says many of their undercover videos show children at these events, and he says this bill also states that taking a minor to a cockfighting event will remain a misdemeanor. A bill requiring sex offenders to use their real names on social media accounts has passed the Senate and is heading to the House. Senate Bill 249 would prohibit a registered sex offender who was convicted of crimes against children from creating or controlling social media accounts where their full legal name is not prominently displayed. The bill is retroactive, so past offenders would also be subject to its provisions. The House State Government Committee in Frankfort has given the green light to an amended version of House Bill 509. The revised bill mandates the use of agency-designated emails for official business by individuals in public agencies, prohibiting the use of private emails. Agencies in compliance will only need to produce electronic information from agency-owned devices or designated email accounts. The proposed legislation aims to streamline open records searches while excluding personal devices, a point of contention that prompted the removal of certain sections from the original bill.
And I think we've got to have an environment where people can have a discussion, ask a question, say, hey, what time is the committee meeting, without everything being laid bare and subject to a search.
The committee passed the bill 12-4. It now heads to the full House for a vote. Law enforcement agencies have found success with a new drug task force. The Laurel County Sheriff's Office, London Police Department, and Knox County Sheriff's Office are partnering together. Knox County just joined this year. London Police and the Laurel County Sheriff's Office started the task force in 2023. Major Robbie Grimes says they have multiple hands on deck for the partnership.
We have two dedicated task force officers from just our department. And then we also have two narcotics detectives in addition to that they're not totally dedicated to the task force, but they're part-time dedicated.
Grimes says the Knox County Sheriff has one deputy on the task force. This is funded by the Appalachia High Intensity Drug Trafficking Areas organization. The Pike County Health Department is working with partners on a coalition for change. The department and other agencies and advocates are spreading hope for survivors and victims of domestic violence by sharing resources and being available. The Pike County Coalition for Domestic Violence met earlier this week on a mission to decide how best to serve those in need in the area, a program that took root after the 2022 Allen police ambush.
There was much interest in forming a domestic violence coalition. We feel as a group that there is a lot of good that we can do that will reduce domestic violence harm in our community.
You can find out more information on our website. Nearly 2 years after the deadly school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, the latest investigation into the police response triggered a furious reaction. CBS's Michael George has that.
Bring him back!
There was an explosion of anger after the investigator hired by the Uvalde City Council delivered his findings Thursday afternoon.
You were paid by them, and you just came out and, what was that, a deposition?
Former Austin-based police detective Jesse Prado spent a year investigating police officers that remained on the city force after the shooting that killed 19 children and 2 teachers at Robb Elementary School.
There were many failures, sir.
Officers waited more than an hour to confront and kill the shooter. Prado blamed communication failures, poor training, and a lack of equipment, but concluded police showed level-headed thinking by not opening fire into a darkened classroom.
I believe if they would have had a ballistic shield, I believe that would have been enough to get them in that door.
He cleared the officers of wrongdoing and said they acted in good faith, comments that enraged family members listening to the presentation.
You call that good faith? They stood there 77 minutes and waited.
My daughter was left for dead. These police officers signed up to do a job. They didn't do it.
The report was in stark contrast to the blistering conclusions of a federal investigation released in January that found massive failures and that officers acted without urgency.
The victims and survivors of the mass shooting at Robb Elementary on May 24th, 2022 deserve better.
Uvalde still hasn't heard the final word. A criminal investigation is underway, and some law enforcement officials have already been asked to testify. Michael George, CBS News.
A sister of one of the Uvalde victims will be among First Lady Jill Biden's guests, or was among First Lady Jill Biden's guests at tonight's State of the Union address. Coming up on Mountain News at 11, we'll remember actor and singer Steve Lawrence.
Plus, wet weather returns as we close out the work week. Your Friday forecast after this break.